Welcome to the Edge of Greatness podcast. The path to greatness is never linear and requires patience and consistency. Join us on our journey as we peel back the layers of success, searching for that elusive core. Each week we will explore a different component of greatness, utilizing experts who have traveled some part of the path that we are all on. We aim to uncover insights into the areas of leadership, coaching, performance, overcoming failure, the power of habits, and so much more. We are all on the edge of greatness. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Edge of Greatness podcast. I'm your host, Charles Schultz, and we have arrived at episode 50. Man, I can't believe how quickly 50 episodes has come up, and I'm excited to bring to you today a highlight reel of the conversations I've had and the stories that have been told up to this point. So what today's all about, for those of you who have been listening to the podcast throughout the entirety of its existence, this is going to be a recap for you. You'll get to hear some old stories, some highlights from the episodes that have come before, maybe jog your memory on a few things that you forgot about, and maybe you'll want to go back and listen to a couple different episodes for a second time. For those of you who are new, this episode is one that you'll want to just check out because it's going to catch you up on some of the main things that we've hit on throughout the entirety of this podcast. Obviously, the podcast is aimed at unlocking people's greatness and to help discover those things. So throughout this episode, we will get highlights from all the different guests I've had on the show, touching on pieces of the puzzle that create greatness, from failure to the performance mindset, to growth mindset, to what's your focus, and much, much more. Positive coaching and leadership, organization, communication. And at the end, I got a nice little story for you to send you on your way to hopefully keep you positive and moving in the right direction. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is I will introduce a section of the conversations, and I will tell you what episodes they're from, who's going to be speaking, and then I'm going to let them carry the show this time. It's not about any of my questions. It's not about having necessarily a conversation in this one. It's about learning from the past episodes and just sitting back and soaking up all that we can from what we've experienced up to this point. So what we will start with today is my favorite topic, failure. We're gonna dig into failure a little bit. There's a few highlighted conversations that you're going to hear from. First, you'll hear Jamie Beckler, which is from episode 41. Then you'll hear Natalie Allport from episode 45. John Gold from episode 37, and Derek Atkins will wrap it up from episode 9. And each one's going to have a little bit of a different take and focus on their failure approach. And it may not quite make sense, but if you really listen to what they're saying, it all kind of fits together. So without further ado, here's Jamie talking about failure.
Even Jordan experienced failure with not making his varsity team as a sophomore. We've all heard about that. But also, what the first 7 years of his career, they didn't do anything with the Bulls. They were constantly coming up short. So he was experiencing success where he was the poster child, literally the poster child, for basketball. He's on every poster. He's winning the dunk contest. He's the leading scorer, but his team isn't winning. That failure, understanding, hey, I'm holding my team back. Wait, what? How are you holding your team back? You're the leading scorer. I'm not shooting any threes. Number one, I'm not shooting them. And number two, I'm not making them when I do shoot them. And it corresponded exactly when he worked on his 3-point game and started taking more shots and started making more, the Bulls ended up winning. So I can't think of anybody off the top of my head that's been successful in life that hasn't had failure at some point that springboarded them.
So I'm a big believer of failing forward, which I see is on that. I'm actually in the middle of writing a TED Talk, and it's in the works of it's about kind of the topic of failure and how the lessons that has taught me, and just being someone who's able to just put myself out there and go through those things. And I think that it's just important if you look at failure. I like to put failure in quotations because I don't believe that failure is true failure if you're looking at it with the right mindset, like you said. Like, I believe that if, for example, I didn't make the Olympics, but I don't look at that as a failure. Everything I'm doing now is just another step. Like for some people, maybe the Olympics is like that ultimate step, but I believe what I'm doing now and the things I've learned about myself through the low periods and the things that I went through after that is just serving me so much more for this next stage of life. And so everything is building off those things. Whether I had, there's tons of businesses that I started as a teen that didn't pan out, or my business has pivoted in different ways, but I never looked at any of those things as failures. They're just learning lessons. And if my end goal is not necessarily, make $1 billion or get on the Olympic podium, what I've learned is like my end goal is to be the best version of me I can become. And that happens through learning and growth. And so putting myself out there and getting that feedback, whether it is through falling short on some things, is one of the best ways that I can push myself to learn and grow and progress. And so failure to me is not failure. It's literally just letting me adapt and get some feedback there to pivot and make different decisions.
Thinking that it's going to be rainbows and unicorns, that there's going to be no obstacles along the way, is unrealistic. And it's that if S hits the fan when it comes to X, Y, or Z, I'm going to have a plan in mind so that I can work through that. I don't even view that as necessarily negative, but it's just simply what will be helpful for you in these moments should they arise. If they don't, great. Proceed. Keep going.
Right.
But if they do, now you're prepared. Post-game reflection, I think getting feedback and building on that, that's not a negative experience. I think the negative experience is what you described of like, I'm going to just go into self-destructive mode and, beat myself up. I think that's where negative becomes so obviously negative and counterproductive. But I often just come back to the words of productive, counterproductive, what's helpful, what's hurtful, because so often we fall victim to what you described of, I need to do something positive. I need to talk to myself positively, without even recognizing if you're someone who actually would benefit more from something a little bit more stern. So I think it just comes back to that awareness piece and understanding what's going to be helpful for me in this moment.
So the guys who were whooping me as a junior, so now I'm a senior athlete. I'm no longer a junior athlete. So I reached that age of 20, 21. You're not considered a junior anymore. So I'm sitting here like, I'm still getting beat by the same guys. And it was just an epiphany moment. Like, I'm tired of this. Like, it's just like, I'm tired of getting beat. What can I do to get over this hump? So mentally, that's when I kind of put that forefront, like, hey, it's either all or nothing.
So as you can see there was some direct conversations about failure. There was some topics and conversations about what to do when failure occurs, which you heard John Gold talk about. And then you heard what it was like from the words of an Olympic athlete when things got tough. What he decided to do was buckle down and dig in. And so with that in mind, I'm going to move on to the next section, which is the performance mindset, because the last two kind of feed into that. They kind of fit in both of these worlds. But this conversation here is one with Jason Dutton from episode 15, and he's going to talk about we get to do what we want to do. And then you've got Aaron Tiller talking about control what you can control. And then Quentin Eberhard from episode 11 is going to talk about those that make it and those that don't and what's the difference. And then you've got Dr. Detling from episode 31, and her conversation here is going to be about how to reset during a performance. Listen in.
I think we really do, on some level, we do what we want to do 24 hours a day. Now, sometimes it may not seem like that, but if I'm choosing to work instead of sleep, what I'm actually saying is keeping my job is more important than sleeping. You're making priority statements throughout the day with everything you do. And as long as you own those decisions, and that's been good for me too, is sort of saying like, look, I am in control of my schedule. It's not like some external force is jerking me this way and that, and like, oh, I'm just so sorry because life got crazy and I quote unquote didn't have time to write. Well, life may have gotten crazy and I may have made decisions that resulted in me not writing those that day. And those might even been good decisions. I mean, there have been days where I haven't written because I had a family activity or something, and that's fine. Like that's a decision that I own. But I'm not saying that life kept me from writing. I'm saying I chose to do this other thing, because I feel like a lot of people, like I think you were just saying, kind of look at it like their life is outside of their own control. Like, wow, I'd really love to write this book or lose 40 pounds or whatever, but like life's just crazy. And a lot of people have crazy lives with, I mean, I should mention, I'm a single guy without any kids or anything. So it's not like I have people demanding my attention most of the time. I have a lot more flexibility than other people do, but you still make priority statements. And if losing that weight or writing that book is really important to you, you will do that instead of, again, watching Netflix. Not that I hate Netflix, but that's the example that keeps coming to mind, because that's a low, very low activity. You know, you're not really, you kind of receive information.
You got two options there. You can sit there and dwell on it, or you can control what you can control. I can't control the fact that I'm shorter than him. I can't control the fact that I didn't get the opportunity. I can control when I get the opportunity, maximize it, you know, and that's the only things that's what I really live on. That's why I stand for. That's why I wake up every morning to come out here. I come in here and work out every morning, and with just a goal in mind, just like, don't quit, don't give up. I want to be done with football because it's my time. I mean, it's on my terms. You know what I'm saying? It's my choice. Nobody wants to make the choice for me. So, and that's why I get up. That's why I do everything I do, so I can control my life, and nobody else will control what I got going on, per se.
A lot of it is the motivation. But you're exactly right. Don't get it twisted. There are guys in the professional rankings that God has just blessed them, and they don't have the motivation. He didn't bless them though with the motivation, which is why, you know, guys our people in our field still have a career and jobs, and it's still in demand, is because you have to be able to do that sometimes. But I'd say the biggest thing across the board is the mental side to me. The mentally, whether it be the motivation, whether it be the mental toughness, whether it be the determination, whatever you want to call it, whatever adjective you want to use, I think that's the biggest thing for me. A lot of successful big leaguers just are very, very stubborn, and whether that's in a good way or bad way, they're stubborn. And I've been blessed, like you said, to talk and be around and pick brains of a lot of great minds in baseball, and like even Barry Bonds is very stubborn. And that's not, I mean, he's a great human being, but stubborn as far as a hitter goes. Like when we would talk hitting philosophy and stuff like that. And he's stubborn enough to lay off of, whatever pitches he's not looking for. That's a stubborn individual. Just to say, okay, this is a changeup, outer half, it's a strike. I don't want that. I'm not looking for that. That's hard to do. And so I think a lot mental side of things is what, for me, differentiates a lot of the big leaguers and guys that stay in the big leagues. Because you also have your guys that get, and it's no disrespect to them, because the cup of coffee guys, that's still, there's only a handful of guys in general. I would have killed for a cup of coffee in the big leagues.
For sure.
But the difference between those guys and then the 15-year, 20-year big leaguers, to me, it's the mental. It's to know how to do stuff that you don't want to do day in, day out, whether it be, if you're a pitcher, throw a bullpen on a day that you're just not really feeling it, or work out, or eat right, or just whatever may have you for any individual situation. To me, that is what I see, across the board, is the difference between the constant big leaguers and then the guys at this level, to just mentally be able to mature and realize that there's a lot of things I'm going to have to do whether I want to or not.
Sure. And part of that's going to depend on the nature of the sport. So if you're in a sport that has natural breaks in play, like baseball, football, volleyball, tennis, right? So after each point, you have a moment. Sometimes the moment's a little bit longer than others. That's going to be different than sports like basketball, soccer, where it's just a continuous play and you don't have that time, right? You have to keep your mind where it is. You don't have time to process what just happened, or the ball's gone and you're not going to be able to perform, right? So those are going to be different depending on the nature of the sport that you're in. So the easier one, obviously, is the breaks in play, because you have that time to kind of get your mind in the right place where it's supposed to be when it's supposed to be there, and to slow yourself down. And so getting into those breaks in play, it definitely comes back to the breathing, but it also comes back to what are you saying to yourself in those moments? What is it that you are preparing yourself to do? Are you stuck in the past of what just happened? Or do you take a learning lesson, if you have a moment to take that, and are you focused more on the next play? And we know the most important play in any sport is always the next play, always. And so
Right.
getting your mind into that next play is going to be imperative. And so, if you can go back to Ken Revis's Heads Up Baseball, and I don't mean to leave off Tom Hansen, of course, but Ken just, I miss that man so much. He passed away a couple years ago, and it's just, he was just such an amazing, amazing human being that I'm so grateful I had the opportunity to call a friend. But if you look at some of his stuff, you can use it in any sport where he talks about releases, like doing something to physically release the last play. And like you're talking about, hitters staring at the barrel of their bat and taking that breath. What Ken talks about in his book essentially is like, what's your execution? What's your plan? What do you intend to do? So as they're looking at the barrel, they're thinking about, line drive down the middle or something like that. Like what is their intention? And that breath is keeping you in the present moment. And so that's a super simple way to kind of release some of that negativity. He does things like, or he talks a lot in that book, some of his releases for hitters are use what you're already doing physically. So if you tend to, unstrap and restrap your gloves, the Velcro on your gloves, you can use that and put a mental meaning to it. So essentially, as you unstrap the glove, you're taking off the last pitch. And then as you put the Velcro back on and restrap, it's like, I'm putting on the next pitch, time to focus, time to go. So you have that time between plays to kind of get your mind in the right space, right? Yeah. Now, if you don't have that time, basketball, soccer, whatever it is that you're playing, that you don't have that time until the ball goes out of bounds or, there's a foul called or something. A lot of times what I'll do is just have people in that moment, something happens and their mind is stuck in the past, just start commentating in your head what's going on around you. So-and-so has the ball, run to the corner, get to the open space, find the defender, whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing in that moment, commentate in your mind. Because what that will do is get your mind into that present moment rather than stuck in the past. And all of this, Charles, is based on two big things about our brain that we know to be true that are really important when it comes to performance. And the first one is, at any one moment in time, you can only have one thought in your head. We switch back and forth between thoughts very rapidly, but in that forefront conscious part of your mind, if I took a snapshot of your brain, there's only one thought. That's it. You only get one. The second thing to know is that forefront conscious part of your mind, we call that the law of occupied space. And basically what that means, and notice we said law of occupied space, which means we know this is true, okay? It is a law. So basically what that means is that forefront conscious part of your mind where that one thought resides will always be occupied with something. There's always something there. So even when you think you're turning off your brain and not thinking anything, there's something there. Mm-hmm. It might not be a thought. It might be more that part of your brain is tuned into how your body feels. You might not be aware of what that thought is or what that feeling is, but there is something there. So if we bring that into what I was just talking about, people tell me all the time, I'm at my best when I think nothing. And so I say, okay, great, but you can't not think anything, right? Even thinking like black wall or so, you're still thinking something, there's still something there. So the closest thing to zero is one. What's the one thought that you want to have in that forefront conscious part of your mind that's going to help you be at your best in these moments? And then also the way you keep out the negative, the adversity, the mistakes, the beating yourself up, the way you stop thinking those things is by starting to think something else. Get your mind somewhere else. And basically there's only room for one, and it pushes out those other thoughts. And if you keep your mind focused on that one, such as commentating the game, the ball's here, run there, get here, defend here, get into position, shoot, whatever it might be, you're not thinking those other things. And typically the flow of the game will eventually come into play and replace that thought process. So then you're just into the game. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the ways you can kind of get out of some of those negative funks in those continuous sports like basketball and soccer.
And as we continue on here, we're going to move from the performance mindset, which we just touched on, to the growth mindset. This is a cool conversation too, because there is obviously a lot of different mental aspects to controlling your mind and how that works with your performance and your ability to grow over time. And I felt like a lot of my conversations with people were talking about different ways to master your mind. So this is a fun one for me. This is all about the growth mindset. So first we're going to have TJ Wharton from episode 3. He's actually the first interview that ever went up on the podcast. And his conversation, he gets into a point where he talks about complexity and how the world around us is so complex and we keep looking at it from a simple point of view, but it's not. And then we have Dwayne Carter from episode 25 talking about how he goes into a new situation as a sponge. And then Ray Noe from episode 23 And his conversation, he talks about where his focus is when he first steps into a room, being on listening, not talking. Lastly, I have Dan Bertolini from episode 21 and his talk about the ability to be flexible within routines and how that flexibility allows you to adapt to the changes that are going on around you. And I think that's so important when having a growth mindset. So listen in here and enjoy.
With social media, everything that's going on in the world, we deal with problems as if they're not complex, and everything in life is complex, and people are looking to be efficient in their time when it comes to training in baseball. They're looking to be efficient in their time in life, when necessarily A plus B plus C is not going to equal D, or 2 plus 2 isn't always going to equal 4 in life. Those type of things. Is that because they're looking to be like, Clayton Kershaw, he does this program, so I should do this program. Certain thing, and that applies to anything in life, because everyone's like, oh, if you can't read, you're not going to be successful. That was a big toll on me personally, because I kept trying to sit there and read, and a little bit, I feel like I have massive ADD. I'm just like, but as soon as I found Audible, I wrote about that in my blog, that's when things really started turning for me, because I was able to, obviously I'm not obtaining everything that I'm listening to, but I'm retaining way more than I did when I was not reading.
Especially coming in from high school to college, everybody's the guy. So everybody's probably not used to sitting on the bench, watching their teammates play the whole game without getting a single snap, or maybe playing just on a special team. So one of the things I like to do, and I like to use, is the phrase be a sponge. Be a sponge, and then bring the juice. Because like you said, I love being on the sideline, being hyped up and down, swinging towels, dancing, whatever it takes. And I truly enjoy the game, and I enjoy seeing my team being successful. That's one of the main things, is bringing that energy and that juice every single day, and then also being the sponge. Because like I said earlier, I learned so much from my 5th, 6th year seniors to 4th year seniors that led to me playing the next year. So my situation is different from many others. Like, not a lot of people get to play their second year. It just depends. But if you're that sponge and you soak up everything that you can, when your time and your number is called, you'll be ready to step up to the plate, and you don't waste that opportunity. Because the margin of error is very slim, especially on a high level. So when you do not learn and you just sit there angry, like, I should be playing, I'm better than him, I'm better than her, whoever it may be, you need to learn. Because when your number's called, you can't miss the opportunity.
I think the moment I stepped foot on campus and just got a chance to sit down and talk with, Jonathan and Sam, this is my first time as a college coach. I had no idea what to expect. So I just sat and listened. And that's one thing that I've, I'm a talker, but, one thing that I've learned is there's a lot of value in listening. And I think I translate that, to my players as well, and the hitters. There's a lot of value in just sitting there and listening to their conversations. And instead of speaking for the player, instead have the player speak for themselves. Because the moment that you try to jump in too soon, or right away even, and that player has failure or doesn't have success, I think that's when doubt and questioning starts to arise. So I think the biggest thing is have to, you have to make a relationship first, and you have to build that trust. And that's one thing that, with our staff at Central when we were there, I think we did a great job with that. And, through that master's program, just learning about how I coach, what type of person I am, what I act like when I'm stressed. I mean, all of those conversations that we had were instrumental to where I'm at now, because I was an emotional roller coaster at that point, and I would get fired up, and then I would get real low. And, knowing me, everyone knows when Ray is not in a good place, because I'm about as happy-go-lucky as can be. And when I'm not, so I've really learned to try to, getting back to your question, I've continued to learn from that master's program.
As much as you want to have a routine, it is important though to have flexibility. There are some people that are so regimented in their routine, and when things don't go their way or the schedule gets mixed up, then you have to be able to adapt you have to be very adaptive. It's not basketball where the game's going to be played at 7 o'clock. Who you're playing. There's not going to be any weather issues. We're here, and especially now in the COVID world where things change so dramatically, our players have to be, you have to be regimented in what you're doing, but you also have to have flexibility to be able to adapt. And the players that can adapt the best are the ones that are going to be the teams that can adapt the best are going to be the ones that are most successful.
And now to build off of those last three conversations, I'm going to have a clip from Jenny Rurick on when to speak and how to add value when you speak and why it's important to choose when and where you speak. That's a big piece of the puzzle with the conversations with Dwayne and Ray, where they were talking about being a sponge and listening. Sometimes there's value in listening because then when it's your turn to talk, you can add value to the conversation. From there, I'm going to actually transition straight into the positive coaching and leadership side of things, where I had an amazing conversation with Ryan Alexander in episode 19, and then Kate Lavelle in episode 13, and each of their perspectives on building relationships and being a positive leader will, in my opinion, inspire you to want to change the way you lead those around you.
That's a great question. I think what I find most challenging is that technology is fast, cheap, and easy.
Yeah.
And when that happens, people feel compelled to communicate in that same way. And so we almost spend too much time talking and not enough time listening. We're constantly focusing on putting stuff out and continuing to put stuff out. And it's more about quantity than it is about quality. So I think with the people I work with most, that's something that I'm constantly preaching is it's not about saying something because you can. You should wait to say something until you've got something that you feel will contribute or add value to whomever you're trying to serve.
It's tough to do unless you build those relationships early. I'm a huge John Gordon guy. To me, a lot of my coaching goes back to the guys that, helped develop me as a kid. I grew up, my real dad really wasn't present in my life. So, I was able to use coaches as other dads in my life. I told myself as a sophomore in college or a sophomore in high school, one day, whenever someone tells me I can't play baseball or basketball anymore, I'm going to have to get a job, and I definitely want to teach and coach. And I've known that for a long time. It's, to me, if you can gain that piece where you can communicate with kids, and then when that moment hits the fan, it's a lot easier to get in and talk with them, work through it, find different ways, because our guys know, not just myself, there's numerous coaches on our staff that have our guys back any hour of the day. And we're kids first, way before baseball. Grades, attitude, how you treat your mom. We're big on that way before baseball.
I think the way that we say things is so important. That was the biggest shift for me. It was really the way. And so I don't know, what city are you in?
I'm in Columbus, Ohio.
Okay, you're in Ohio. All right. Well, then you will understand this. So, I moved out to Minnesota, and everybody used to call me East Coast because we're very direct. Okay. I mean, the shortest place to your destination is a straight line. It's not running around the bush, right? Like, so I'm going to tell you, I just don't have time. I don't have time. I just want to get this out. So I was very direct. I was very honest. I don't think I was mean. I was never a coach that would yell at them or would say nasty things to them or, you're lazy, or I never said anything like that. But I would directly tell them, this isn't cutting it. Like, this isn't it. You're not doing it. And they didn't take that well. Like they would go home and be like, my coach attacked me. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I didn't attack you. I literally just said, you're not doing what you need to do. Like, you need to step up, And the problem was, because it wasn't really that in itself was so bad. It was that the feeling they were getting behind that was, you are not enough. It was a personal attack. And so it didn't matter what words I used, because they were not hearing, I believe in you, I care about you, and this is in your best interest. Now,
I knew all those things to be true, but I did what we all do, right? Which is assume that they knew that because I'm their coach and that's my job, that obviously everything I say to you, and because at the first practice I told them over and over again, everything I say to you is to make you better, right? Well, I don't remember that. So I had to rephrase. I had to remember, take the time. And it seems like, I think all the culture stuff seems like extra time. And people say, well, if I have time, I'll add it in. We'll do team building. We'll add a day of this. Well, that's what I did, and it imploded. If you take an extra minute or two and rephrase and be careful of how you say it and when you say it and all those things, then you will save yourself days. I don't even know how long of fire drills, of parents in your office, of phone calls, of, what is wrong with you? Now I have to sit down and figure out why you're pouting because you've been upset for 3 weeks and we don't have the relationship where we can talk about it. So it's telling someone either you don't even seem like you want to be here today. Like, what are you even doing? Like, that seems, it's true. They may need to hear it, but instead you tell them, man, I remember when I picked you for this team. I remember how you impressed me so much with your focus and your speed. And man, we're really hurting for that today. And I know you seem a little bit off your game. What can I do to help bring that back? Is there a way we can dial that in? Because we are better as a team when you bring that. I mean, the difference between those two is night and day. One of them is, my coach needs me right now. I need to dig deep and work hard for them, versus my coach thinks I'm terrible. So what's the point? Nothing I do is right. I keep trying and I just can't get it. So you have a split in the road, and you get to pick who's the athlete you want on the other side of this conversation, on this other side of this interaction. And when you look at your athlete, or you don't look at your athlete, whatever it is, you are creating an outcome, and you get to pick. You going left, you going right, and I guarantee you go right, you're going to be way happier with your team's performance on the other end.
As you can tell from those last 3 conversations, it was a lot about communication when it comes to being a leader. A lot about how you communicate, what you say, when you say it, and building relationships is the key component to making that work. The next section here, we're going to build off of that a little bit, and we're going to move into the performance aspect again from where do you focus? What are you focused on? From Kyle Bobo's conversation with me in episode 5 on getting 1% better each day. And then we have Kate Lavelle again. She's going to come in here and tell us about the red marker, catch the red marker. This is a cool one. You'll want to listen to that. And lastly, my conversation with Vera Jo Bustos from episode 35, where she talks about when you're dealing with struggle, where do you focus? What is important to you in those moments? And I think each of these has an important piece of building the whole and making you complete on your journey to greatness.
You have to take on more responsibility. You have to learn how to manage your time so that you can get in the things that you need to get in order to get 1% better every single day. And the big thing of, staying focused on what your main goals are, doing the things that you need to be doing that are going to help you get better and get towards the main goal, the big picture, and making sure that we're not taking steps backward. Because like we talked about before, every next level that you get to, it's that much harder to get to that goal or remain where you are.
Well, you're not doing well in that one thing, but what's your focus? Well, how are you doing on that? Let's get back to that, because, if you hear about the, all these studies they do, one of the, exercises is you throw a whole bunch of markers up in the air and you tell someone, catch as many markers as you can. And what happens usually is they can't catch any of them because they're trying to grab all of them. And if you say catch the red marker, they almost always will catch it because they have one thing to focus on. So get them to redial in. Same for yourself, like, man, that practice was a mess. We all have those days where we leave and we're like, I don't know why I even had practice today. Like, we're worse than we were the day before. But if you say, well, my intention was to get them really excited about training for something, or my intention was to really improve this one tiny skill that I know was going to affect them later on. Well, did we do that? Oh yeah, we did. The rest of the practice was a hot mess, but I accomplished what I came in here to do. And that kind of keeps you from getting that constant down of I didn't fix everything today, because that's what we want to do, right? Like run the drill until it's right.
I would ask them a simple question, because from my experiences, this is something that I really spent a lot of time on. And I would just ask, are you perceiving your success due to your talent or because of your effort? Right.
Okay.
So if all you do is base your self-worth and your successes off the talents you currently possess, you aren't really leaving any room for growth. And so a common one that I'll use is like Venus and Serena, right? Everybody knows who Venus and Serena is.
Right.
And we all know them as masters of their craft. But even them at one point in their life probably lost, right? They started as beginners. And even at the very beginning, maybe they were just started great in their game. I don't really know their story, but at one point in time, they weren't the all-time best. At one point in time, they weren't who they are. And even now, if you see Venus, right, she's kind of still at the top, but hey, she's getting beat a little bit now. So how is she handling that?
Right.
And so you can see some of these other professionals, but I always go back to, again, are you always just going back to your talent or your effort? And so when your success is measured by your effort and the progress that effort has accumulated, then that becomes something you feel you can control, something you can choose to improve on. So it always comes back to our perceptions, is what I like to teach, right? The choices that we can make, the decisions that we continue to make with our game moving on. By focusing on your improvement, by focusing on your progress and eliminating any fixed mindset that you may have and acts of perfectionism, then you encourage your own mastery. And then mastery leads to confidence. Confidence then leads to trying new things. Trying new things then leads to mastering new things. So I would just teach where you have to be open to growth in numerous areas of your game. Okay, so this isn't working. Where else can I grow?
So once again, here we are, 50 episodes in, some incredible conversations. And for me, I have learned so much from some incredible minds, some awesome leaders, some talented athletes, and I can't wait to see what comes next in the next 50 episodes. I've had some conversations with people that said they will be on the show, and I'm excited to talk to them in the future. And I think we're going to really touch on some leadership aspects, on how that can determine your greatness, as well as I love the mental side of things. So I'm sure that I'm going to connect with a few more mental performance coaches and how we can master our minds to become the great beings that we're meant to be. So with that in mind, I'm going to leave this final clip up here for you. It is a message from Tammy Matheny, and it's a story about the mindset that you carry. And if you have this mindset and you can be in the moment and understand that this is good, the things that you can accomplish is incredible. So I hope you enjoyed this story, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. As always, guys, keep reaching for the stars, fall flat on your face, but remember, whenever we fall, always get up.
I took the title from an African folktale called This Is Good. And do we have time for me to share the folktale?
Yeah, please do. Please do.
So there was a king in Africa, and he kept his best friend with him no matter where he went, because the best friend would always remind him, this is good. It could be the worst day in the world, but the friend would say, this is good. And so they went hunting one day, and the best friend loaded the king's rifle for him. Well, it backfired and blew the king's thumb off. So the king is irate, and he throws his best friend in jail. All the way to the jail, the best friend was like, this is good. You know, he's in jail, and the other guys in jail are like, you're an idiot. This isn't good. Your best friend just threw you in jail. No, this is good. And fast forward a year and a half, he's still in jail, and the king goes on another hunting party where they're captured by a band of cannibals. And the cannibals are going to eat them and kill them one by one. But they were very superstitious and did not believe in eating or killing anything that wasn't whole. So when they saw that the king didn't have his thumb, they let him go. And the king was like, oh my gosh, my best friend just saved my life. And he runs back to the prison, gets down on his knees, and begs for forgiveness. Please, please, please forgive me. The best friend, of course, said, this is good. The king said, I know it was good for me. You saved my life, but I've ruined your life. The best friend was like, nope, this was good. You see, if I had been with you, I could have been killed and eaten by the cannibals. And so this is good. And you know what I tell athletes is, it's a little dramatic, but what would happen if we all had this is good mindset? This best friend had, whether he was born this way or trained his brain, did not see things as good or bad, just as they were. And he kept his mind alive and mentally alive long enough to be able to respond to immediate situations that didn't seem good. And so, I read that about 12 years ago, and it's been my motto for life. And it really has made a difference professionally, personally, in every aspect of my life. And when I want to immediately get upset for that immediate result that's negative, I have to tell myself, okay, this is good. I may not know why it's good right now, but I have to believe it is and keep focusing. And Charles, I can tell you, I cannot think of an example where eventually the this is good hasn't revealed itself. It might be tomorrow, it might be next week, or even a year from now. But it again, keeping that mindset, all right, this happened, this is good.